Almost 10 years ago, Destiny 1 was released in the world we have all come to love, and some people love to hate because they don't understand that there are other games to play, or, that they can go outside and touch grass, was born. The Traveler was front and center, plastered on cover art, constantly talked about in-game, and took up 2/3 of the tower's social space skybox. I'm trying to say that 3 times fast. Social space skybox, okay. For years, we knew we had one job and one job only. Keep the Traveler safe. But from what? We were told the darkness. And even that was vague and never really explained. Were the Hive the darkness? What about the Vex? The Cabal? The Fallen? We had no idea. We just knew all these things were attacking us, and some unknown darkness force was behind most of it. With the introduction of the Taken, we knew the Hive were probably the closest to a darkness race in game, but still, why were they doing all this? Who was pulling the strings? The light had a quote-unquote face, so to speak, even if it was just a floating silent orb. There was never any questions what gave us our gifts and put us down our path. But the same was not true for the darkness. Before I get into the video, I wanted to take a moment and introduce myself though. I've noticed the majority of people watching these videos are from those that are not subscribed. My name is StickyMZ, and I have been doing Destiny lore for over 3 years. I am fairly new to consistently uploading here on YouTube. This started back in November, but I was the very first Destiny lore creator on TikTok, and one of the first original 3 Destiny creators on TikTok. I know a lot of creators have moved over to making short form content on TikTok. I was one of the people that created that space for them. And also, I will say, as a very long time supporter and fan of Bungie, it was a great honor to have been interviewed by Bungie for their website. So I know I am new to the YouTube scene, but I have been around for a while and even worked with a lot of well-known creators that you yourselves probably follow. My goal is to reach 10,000 subscribers before the final shape. So if you are enjoying my content or enjoy Destiny lore and want to see more, please hit that sub button. We've been working very hard on building up this YouTube page. And if you ever need people to play with, I do have a Discord for you all. Almost 10,000 people with LFGs and Sherpas, and if you've never done endgame content, my community wants to help you. Okay, back to the video at hand. Thank you for listening to my little introduction of myself. Our understanding of the darkness changed forever in the Presage exotic mission. Osiris, who is Savathun at the time, talked with Keitel about the Crown of Sorrows.
Did your data mining yield anything about a crown?
Amsat detailed an ornate procession that brought a Hive crown from Leviathan to Glykon. It allowed the darkness to invade the Scorn's thoughts.
Not the darkness. The entity.
The two are entwined. Does the difference matter?
That there is a difference makes our understanding of the darkness a facade.
Savathun, once again wearing the face of Osiris, already knew this. She knew about the Witness. In fact, she's the one who made the Crown of Sorrows. This is for us, the player, the Vanguard, the Guardian. Savathun has decided it was now time for us to know there is something else out there, that the darkness is not our real enemy. Then in the Witch Queen DLC, we were finally given a name to this entity in the darkness, the Witness.
I stand before a being with 1,000 names. It whispers one. The Witness. Remember it. Remember that name. It is not darkness, but something that wears it like a cloak. It gives darkness a wicked shape. I refuse to be its servant.
We had a name now. The Witness was someone even Savathun was scared of. Someone who made her a slave for millions of years, and she was desperately wanting to be free. Going as far as removing the one thing keeping her alive for those millions of years, her worm. She wanted out of her cosmic contract with this being, turning to the very thing she tried to destroy for most of her life, the light, the Traveler. At the end of the Witch Queen campaign, we were treated to one of the greatest cutscenes in the history of Destiny.
We have seen
children of soul cry out for salvation. You promise them life, but deliver only death, as you have for so many before. Enough. Enough death. Enough life. You have no pieces left to place. The game is over. Do not be afraid. Your pale heart holds the key. This time, there is no escape.
Finally, after 8 years, we saw what we were really fighting. The face behind the darkness. The reason for the Hive's invasion. And not only that, but we were told its motivations for the horrible things not only we endured, but humanity as a whole since the collapse. Enough death, enough life. The Witness wants the universe to stay the same forever. Its perfect, final shape. It took 1.5 years before we found out more information about the Witness. In the Season of the Deep, we learned the Witness used to be individuals who eventually decided to merge together into a single being. From there, speculation went out over the Destiny lore community. How many people are in this singular being? Are there people who were forced to join? Can we free the people inside who never wanted to be a part of this walking corporation? The unfortunate answer is no. No, we cannot. Because, well, everyone who didn't want to join is dead. They killed everyone who was against the Great Merge. In one of the final entries in the Collector's Edition lore book, one future member of the Witness sends a letter to an old friend. In this lore book, there are several entries of 2 members of the Witness's original race, HNW RS6. For clarity, HNW is the one who would eventually become the Witness, and RS6 is their friend who left the planet hundreds of years prior to their merging. I will be honest with you all, I have been going back and forth so much between which is which. I am literally rewriting parts of this video right before I record it. I really thought for a bit HNW was the one who escaped, and it wasn't until a late night phone call with one of my mods that someone pointed out something I missed. I will explain why I thought HNW was the one that escaped in a little bit, but I also know that I was wrong. But first, let's look at this lore. My distant friend. I hope you still have your communicator. Though our last parting was acrimonious, and it has been many centuries since I have last seen your message alert glimmering in the corner of my vision, I chose to believe you've not cut this last atomic line between us. I composed this message in secret. The rest of the consensus would not understand. They do not know you as I did, but they could. It is in that hope I reach towards you now. My friend, the consensus has won. Yesterday the penitent voted aye. The nihilists and the sociophists have been destroyed. We will exuviate and shepherd the universe to its final shape. We will prune away its dead branches and coax forth its full potential. Even as I say these words, I feel the old doubts crawling through my thoughts again. But it has been a long and longer still since you renounced the consensus and set off into the cosmos. You have not seen the violence that visited our shores, a terrible reflection of that ancient history which we believed was behind us. Though we were steadfast in our position and would have continued to argue it, however long it might take, there were dangerous elements, subversives and defectors. We did not strike first, nor did we choose our response lightly. It has been so long since I wielded the pruning shears, I had forgotten how. My hands shook. I could only imagine how you would have looked at me. But it is over now. What has been done is done. They were the last. And now we are all in consensus. If I wished to persuade you with words alone, I would not have told you this. You have steadfastly abhorred such measures since they were first proposed. I do not tell you this to shock or intimidate you, nor would I withhold this truth, because I do not seek to persuade you with a lie, even of omission. I tell you this because I respect you. Of everyone I have ever known, you have been fiercest in your compassion, most keenly aware of the gap between means and ends. If you return, if you join the consensus, then I know our cause is true. That after all this time we have found our apodictic truth. I will discard myself with no regrets. I do not say this to put my finger on the scale of your decision, only to inform you of the situation. After our excavation, we will no longer know the shape of your absence. What we are becoming will not be capable of doubt or dissent. It never will have been capable of such things. We will forget our pain, our strife, our petty grudges, our prejudices. It will no longer exist, and therefore will never have existed. Do you understand? There is not much time. Now that we are in consensus, our progress is unhindered. The veil unravels before us. The fundamental principles we have long hoped for are woven in its threads. And when we have completed the process and thrown off our lesser selves, we will be perfect. And even so, I cannot help but nurture this seed of heresy, the grit which I hope will be subdued by this pearl, that what we become will be lesser if it is made without you. How could perfection be lesser? Yet the feeling burns in my veins, so I must share it with you. I confess this is selfishness. I do not want to forget you. HNW. They couldn't afford to have anyone linked with them that wasn't perfectly in tune with their idea of the final shape. Not only is there no one that disagrees with them inside the witness, but they cut away their memories. They have no memory of anyone that isn't them, no sense of guilt over killing their friends and family. There is no ability to understand anyone but itself. In every sense of the word, the witness is a sociopath. It has one singular drive: to make the universe its version of the final shape. So a lot of us, myself included, were hoping we would be able to free members of the witness and have them not only turn against the witness, but also maybe become allies in a new race we interact with post-final shape. This also destroys the theory I've seen going around that ghosts are members of the witness who did not want to be a part of the whole and were freed by the traveler during the collapse and given a second chance. Those people do not exist. But there may be one member of the witness's original race still out there, RS6. Now, like I said, I'll explain why I thought this was RS6 writing to his friend HWN. I was wrong though, and at the end of this, I'll show you what finally got me to change my mind. I was going back and forth so much since this lore came out, and was never confident in my understanding. I would reach out to people I trusted in my community, my mods and admins and things like that, and ask them to reread some of this stuff in the lore book, because I would just walk away and be second guessing myself, and I don't like giving out bad information, which is why I've spent most of this video, or at least writing this video, delicately looking over each line to see which one was which. Which I will say, there is nothing wrong with being wrong, and there is nothing wrong with diving deeper and having a little self-doubt. So this was my argument for why I thought it was HNW that left their race. Let's start by reading this lore that we just read. If I wished to persuade you with words alone, I would not have told you this. You have steadfastly abhorred such measures since they were first proposed. I do not tell you this to shock or intimidate you, nor would I withhold this truth because I do not seek to persuade you with a lie, even of omission. I tell you this because I respect you. Of everyone I have ever known, you have been the fiercest in your compassion, most keenly aware of the gap between means and ends. If you return, if you join the consensus, then I know our cause is true. The person writing this letter says two things. Their friend would have been against killing everyone and forcing their idea of the final shape on others. And two, their friend had the fiercest compassion and understood that the ends don't always justify the means. Now, let's look at the lore page where these two friends are having a conversation. And I'm going to be completely honest with you. As I'm rereading the script right now, I am currently re-second guessing myself, because I felt like my argument, which you will see in a second, was so sound that it had to be true. So I want you all to know that I am right here second guessing myself mid recording this video. We mustn't abandon the path to the final shape simply because it is difficult. Difficult? You are being willfully obtuse. Difficult might describe a sustained effort or self-denial done with the intent and care of one's own self-being. What you are describing is coercion. A moment's coercion to prevent a millennia's suffering. We can see what will happen if we sit idly by. If we choose to do nothing and our inaction allow this carnage to continue, then we are complicit. Thus, the ethical choice is to act. At what cost? With what means? Would you advocate for the use of violence? Will you approve of the murder of those who disagree? Will you, when you're merciful, cause lesser harm for the greater good? No, never. The purpose and the means are inseparable. It is simple teleology. We are not advocating for needless cruelty. There are countless methods of intervention at our disposal with compassion as their guiding pillar. The transition would be uncomfortable, naturally, but the alternative is to sit idly by and watch the inevitable extinction of a species, an extinction we could prevent. If the final shape truly is the greatest good imaginable, then its righteous should be self-evident. It should be so clear to anyone and anything that comprehends it that we should never need to do more than share the information for them to reach the same conclusion. That we have failed to do so, even among the consensus, suggests our imperfections in our own understanding. If we cannot prove an apocalyptic final shape, even to ourselves, to our own kin, whom we strive to understand as well as our own selves, then how can we possibly declare it fit to teach others? What good is perfection if it is purely theoretical? All concepts are refined through practice. If we focus on ourselves to the exclusion of others, if we refuse to help others and thereby pursue our own perfect happiness at the cost of their immediate pain, what do we call that if not selfish? Humility, acceptance of our own limited perspective, indifference to suffering? I am not indifferent. I would gladly endure pain if doing so would help others. It is a different matter entirely to force it upon someone else, even for the sake of another. An improperly healed bone must be rebroken before it can set properly. An infected wound must be lanced. Do you abstain from uprooting weeds, even if they threaten to strangle your garden? If some suffering is inevitable, then surely it is better to seek the maximum good from it. If the choice is between greater and lesser evils, then the choice itself is flawed. I refuse to participate. I agree with you, in theory, but we do not exist purely in the theoretical. This suffering is already happening now, all the time, everywhere we look. Come see me and I will show you the observatory's readings. Such sights as we have seen, my friend, make me sick to my soul. I thought that the observatory could only see possibilities, the future branches of past visible light readings. We have made improvements. The glass mines trim the excess branches. What we see now are the strongest paths, and in the seen, they become true. Then tell me what you have seen. I gain nothing from running from the truth, no matter how uncomfortable. Cities turning on themselves in a frenzy of self-destruction. Children offering up parents in superstitious sacrifice to bloodied gods. An entire people who would boil off their own atmosphere rather than let their neighbors enjoy fresh air. Great waves drowning worlds. Bodies which do not decompose. For everything, down to the very bacteria, has died as well. Machine plagues carving their prediction machines into moons. Your garden, destroyed. As the observatory saw it, so it came to pass. I apologize. I was unkind. I was wrong to bring up old hurts. As you say, sometimes an infected wound must be lanced before it can heal. You should not be ashamed of your physician's instinct. I have meditated on your words. I sat in my ship, keeping company with the pain I felt when I saw my world burning. That terrible loss. You would prevent such a thing from happening again. You have always wished to protect others from harm, and I honor that. But I have reached a different conclusion from you. As I saw the ruin of my great work, my thoughts traced a different path. If the final shape is the greatest good, then it must be enduring. That my garden could be destroyed suggests that it was not a final shape after all. Perhaps the ships which came to burn it down understood its final shape better than I. Are you suggesting that the final shape of that system was its destruction? For it to be left a blasted ruin? Is it not a possibility? Then what we have seen through the observatory might as well be the final shape too. Suffering and misery, anarchy, endless self-consuming hedonism, utter sterility. How can any of that be considered a greatest good? The core of the final shape is improvement. Consider the virus, my friend, the parasite, the predator. These things that exist only by taking from others. To those things, improvement may well entail causing greater and greater harm to others, not out of malice, but as a simple fact of existence. When you eradicate an illness, are you stamping out a microscopic final shape? Should we care less for the final shape of a disease simply because it is smaller than us, or because it does us harm? We have studied our histories. We know what we are capable of, what we have done. What if the nihilists are right, and our final shape is our own destruction? Are you seriously considering the words of a fringe group of self-flagellating pessimists? This is pure nihilistic indulgence, advocation of responsibility. The existence of past evil does not invalidate future good. Should we deny what we can do because of what we have done? We of the merciful have asked similar questions and reached our own answer. We have survived unimaginable suffering, even at the hands of others. The gardener encourages our growth and improvement day by day. Who better to understand the struggles of others and guide them out of the miserable warrens into the light of day? We could help the whole universe to be better than they are, just as we are always striving to be better tomorrow than we are today. We could help them, and they will go on to help others. The good we do can compound, just as the evil has in the past. And yet we, the first chosen of the gardener, cannot agree on our own way. The gardener offers us no guidance, no principles with which to use the gifts it gives us, no reassurance for the doubts that plague us, no answers for our questions. Why have we been chosen? Why does the gardener, in its power and wisdom, not achieve perfection itself? If my garden was meant to be destroyed, why did it not stop the invaders? And why did it allow its gifts to be misused? It did not correct the profusion on their path to their great fatal error. It did not stop the conquerors from using its gifts it granted for subjugation. Are we to accept that these two were meant to happen? If you reject the notion that destruction can be a final shape, how can we accept that the gardener allowed us to make such grievous mistakes? Even after all these millennia, there is much we do not understand about the gardener. Perhaps we will not understand until we have achieved the final shape for ourselves. And when we have reached the final shape, will it make sense? Will we all be able to live in a universe where people act as they have always acted, for the self-evident good, where evil does not exist because we do not allow it, where all are aligned without suffering or doubt? This isn't like you, my friend. I am coming to see you. All will be well. So here is my argument about why I thought HNW was the original one that ran off. And like I said, I know that I am wrong, but I'm just going to let you all see what my thought process was before coming to my conclusion. Which one of these two sounds like the compassionate one? HNW to me, at least. They say things like, I am not indifferent. I would gladly endure pain if doing so would help others. It is an entirely different matter to force it upon someone else, even for the sake of another. And they also said, if the choice is between greater and lesser evils, then the choice itself is flawed. I refuse to participate. It is very obvious in this lore that RS6 is trying to convince his friend HNW that they have to act because there is so much suffering, even if it means kind of forcing people to think like you. And HNW isn't agreeing with that. Another point is that the person writing that final letter to their friend informs them that a certain faction has been destroyed, the Nihilists. The Nihilists are the same faction that HNW was telling RS6 about and considering their idea of the final shape correct. I believe that the final lines of that final letter was not a signature as we humans do when writing a letter, but RS6 wanting to remember his friend one last time. I confess this in selfishness. I do not want to forget you, HNW. The person writing this letter knows what is happening next, and that they will never remember that their friend ever existed. So in one last plea, they beg their friend to come home and join them, and he says their name. This is what made sense to me at that time, because it's similar to like when you really want to drive home a point. It's one thing to say, I miss you, and another thing to say, I miss you, Sarah. It's more personal and has more weight in the delivery. And lastly, let's look at this line right here. My friend, the consensus has won. Yesterday, the penitent voted aye. The penitent is the same group RS6 was a part of. This merciful, penitent, benefict was mentioned in the very first lore entry of this book and the conversation between the two. In both times, it is said that RS6 is a part of this group. This is a group that voted yes to killing everyone off and merging to be a singular entity known as the Witness. Everyone from the Witness's civilization is either inside the Witness, dead, or a slight possibility that one person is still out there somewhere. But like I said, I was wrong. HNW is not the one out there, and it might be RS6. And this is the line that got me to change my mind. It had been so long since I wielded pruning shears, I had forgotten how. My hands shook. I could only imagine how you would have looked at me. But it is over now. What has been done is done. They were the last, and now we are all in consensus. HWN was the one who went out and produced Garden Worlds. RS6 created the technology through the Traveler's gifts, but was unable to use them himself, as stated in the very first lore entry. It's exhilarating. I've wielded the Gardener's tools before, but never at such scale. It feels unfair, honestly. You led the development of such marvels, and yet you were leaps away, unable to see the culmination of your hard work. I know you claim it doesn't matter to you, as long as you know your work is being put to good use, but still, permit me this idle fancy. RS6 was a stay-at-home scientist, while HWN was the one testing out their work on different planets. So HNW would be the one familiar in using pruning shears, not RS6. So what makes this strange is they almost flip-flop positions. There's no lore in between their conversations and the final letter. We know hundreds and hundreds of years have passed since they last saw each other. So who knows what could have happened? But HNW said he didn't want to coerce people. He didn't want to force things upon others. But somewhere in between that conversation and this letter, he was started to be okay with it. That line about pruning shears, right after talking about how they killed everyone else, that implies he was part of the group that killed people. That's how he used his pruning shears. He's saying, well, not human life, but their civilization's life is similar to cutting out bushes and weeds and trimming plants. Something happened that made RS6 flee and HNW accept his fate. I hope the gaps become more filled in and more lore and final shape, but I think this flip-flop started at the end of their conversation with this line right here. And when we have reached the final shape, will it all make sense? Will we all be able to live in a universe where people act as they have always acted for the self-evident good, where evil does not exist because we do not allow it, where all are aligned without suffering or doubt? That line right there shows the path that HNW would eventually go down. It's not much, but it does show that in that conversation, and we do not know how long that conversation, over how much time that conversation took place. It's almost like text messages. It could have been days, it could have been weeks, it could have been months, it could have been years that they were talking. But something triggered in the end of his mind where he started seeing the path towards what would eventually become the Witness. I think the parallels between the Witness's civilization and the Vanguard are very interesting. Both they and the Vanguard had a governing body called the Consensus, and I don't think Bungie put this there on accident, because both these consensuses had main factions that were allowed to make rules and lesser factions that were allowed to have ideas. The Vanguard's factions over time included the three we all know: Dead Orbit, New Monarchy, and Future War Cult. But they also had other factions that used to have a seat at the governing table, like the Cemetery and the Concordant. Smaller factions that never joined the Consensus were the Cult of Osiris and the Hidden. The Witnesses' Consensus had similar groups. I don't know if we are sure which of these groups had say in the laws and policies, but I will include all listed in this lore, and we can make some theories about their ideals from their name. The Summit, Pyramidion, Final Shape. They see their mission as the most important, their idea of the final shape. Merciful, Pendendant, Benefict. This would be most likely their version of a church. Mercy, feeling ashamed and self-improvement. Transition, uplifting, enlightenment. This would be the group that wanted to coexist and work with each other to be a better as a whole. Enduring, incontrovertible, self-fulfilling. This group would be that you can't change things once they are set in motion. What will be, will always be. Nihilists, redolent, accepting. This group would be like, we all know what nihilists are, but this group would be like, there's no point to anything, and it's just kind of better to accept that your own actions may be your end. And two other factions that we don't really know about that seem to have been wiped out because they use the Traveler's Gifts for bad reasons are the Provision, Bountiful Swarm, and the Conqueror's Primacy Sovereign. These two factions would seem to be akin to what our warlords were like. They conquered and used the Traveler's Gifts in ways that they should not have been used, ways that they were not intended. But what about RS6? Are they still out there? This information is unknown, but we do know that the Witness's people lived extremely long lives. We do not know exactly how long, but we do know that a few hundreds of years is nothing to them, as implied in the first lore entry. The best we know is that the House of Winter and the House of Rain found this broken pyramid ship. While the time frame to discovery is unknown, we do know that the House of Rain became an extinct house well before our revival, and the House of Winter was wiped out sometime during the Taken War. So it's safe to say sometime in the last 1,000 years, this destroyed ship and data log were recovered. One theory, and this is just a theory, I would like to throw out before ending this video, is the possibility that RS6 is living in the Black Garden. In the second lore entry, there's a list of items that were on this ship, and one of them is Asphodelia. Everything else in this log I cannot really find any information on, but Asphodelia is a tree, and we see this tree quite a bit. It is found in the Black Garden and the Dreaming City. Now, it originates in the Black Garden, but they brought it to the Dreaming City for decoration. This is a tree that has been getting planted by the Witness's people long before they merged into one. This tree was very important as it was called a panacea, which means roughly elixir of life. It was a universal cure-all, could heal any illnesses. This confirms that the Black Garden was at the very least created by the Witness. But creating life doesn't really fit in with the MO of the Witness's current philosophies. I think there's a possibility that the Black Garden was created by RS6 as a new home, and maybe co-opted later by the Witness and the Soul Divisive. Because as you will see in this lore, HNW tells his friend RS6 that he wishes he could be the one to plant a garden, and maybe RS6 eventually was able to. Let's take a look at this lore entry that was said by HNW. I arrived at the garden to be to find barren rock, as lifeless as the expanse around it, just as the survey said. It's perfect. Rather, it will be perfect. The moment I laid eyes on the allotted system, I knew my initial plans had to go. How inelegant they were, those drafts drawn up by smiling ignorance. Only experience could have cured me of such short-sightedness. Yes, now I can see the path to the summit, Pyramidium, final shape. Here, the Matrodita blade leaves. There, the green grass Isabati blooms, arching overhead. I have brought enough progenitor material to seed 100 worlds. Never mind, 5. In time, there will be a great harvest of panacea from this garden. I'm sure both you and your merciful, penitent benefict will be pleased. I could cover these bare rocks with greenhouses, of course. Rows of neat enclosures, lights in just the right spectra, growth solutions mixed in just the right proportions, microclimate domes calibrated within a fraction of a degree. Very neat, very efficient, very, very boring. After all, that would be just a reflection shard imitation of a system R3TN-PLRMA, wouldn't it? And you know, I've never had any interest in recreating other people's designs. So just between you and me, here's a little secret. The Panacea progenitors weren't all I brought with me. Huh, I can hear you scolding me now. But there was so much space in the cargo hold, and well, to be frank, you're not here to disapprove. Besides, if you could see this allotment, as I do see the potential right in the cracks and crevices of every rock, feel the heart song of their molten cores, you would understand. But you won't need to take my word for it. By the time you can bear to leave work long enough to come visit, my garden will have taken root and grown strong. How lovely it will be to sit together and listen to the wind whistling through the burrows. Perhaps even you will smile. Oh, but I mustn't get ahead of myself. Before any of this can happen, I'll need to prepare. I've unfurled the pergola to capture what I need to weave each planet's atmosphere. The pergola's sail is so vast that I must cross my ship from vertex to see around the sparkling cloth. It's exhilarating. I've wielded the gardener's tools before, but never at such scale. It feels unfair, honestly. You led the development of such marvels, and yet you're leaps away, unable to see the culmination of your hard work. I know you claim it doesn't matter to you, as long as you know your work is being put to good use, but still, permit me this idle fancy. At this rate, it shouldn't take more than a few centuries before I have enough substrate to work with, and then, well, you'll just have to come and see the Summit Pyramidium final shape for yourself, won't you? HNW. Is it so much of a stretch that RS6 is still alive and out there and would want to create a new home for themselves, and not only create a home, but finally be able to use the tools he helped develop? We have no idea when the Black Garden was created or by who. We do not know its purpose or location. We assume another dimension. The only lore we know about the Black Garden are theories from in-game characters. We have never been given concrete information over this location, and a lot of the information that we have been given was contradicted later, like calling it the birthplace of the Vex. Once the books of Unveiling dropped, we knew that just wasn't true. We now know the Vex were the winners of the Garden game before accidentally coming into our universe. I don't know. It's just a theory, and I really hope Bungie develops more around the Black Garden so we know what exactly is going on. No matter what, I really hope Bungie puts RS6 in game. I think having a friendly person billions of years old as a vendor gifting us weapons and armor similar to their race is something that Destiny desperately needs. Destiny needs more variety when it comes to races in game, both friendly and enemy. After Final Shape, our enemies are very, very limited. No new Taken can be created, with Oryx and Quoria dead. No, Ziva Wrath does not have the ability to create Taken. That lore is about Oryx's sword being powerful enough to take, since we know Oryx is still kinda semi-alive somehow. The Fallen are a non-threat. Aramis even left the solar system forever. The Cabal are allies except for the Callous clone army and some angry scions out there. Really, all we have left is Xivu's Hive, the Vex, and Scorn, which given the artwork and theme of the episodes after Final Shape, we will probably be dealing with them before the end of this gaming year. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please subscribe and like and comment. And a special thank you to my VIP members and above, Pulse, Son of a Mitch, and Prince Mav. Thank you all for watching, and remember, hunters never die.
Hunters never die. Hunters never die. No, hunters never die. Hunters never die. No, hunters never die. 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 No, hunters never die. Hunters never die. No, hunters never die. Hunters never die. Hunters never die. Hunters never die. Hunters never die.